Like we be having our moments. We be but okay, someone is in their bag, someone's having their moment right now. Yes, I am a whole world, I am a whole universe. And I think every single one of us, yourself included, is a whole world, is a whole universe. Because some people might have good intentions or the desire or the etc, but sometimes their best is just not good enough. And I think it's also changed my perspective on this idea of if they wanted to, they would. Welcome to another episode of Trauma Learns, in which we discuss the intersection of who we are, what we do, and the lessons that we've learned along the way. My name is Trauma, your host, and for today's episode, it's going to be a solo episode, and we're going to talk about friendships. We have our very intro question, which is in this season of life, if this season of life is a classroom, what is it teaching you about what it means to be human? For me, it's teaching me that I can no longer prolong rest. I'm someone that has a lot of different interests, a lot of different passions. And in the last couple of weeks, slash months, I've had to be very intentional about letting go of different passions and projects and interests that I was really, really looking forward to having. And then recognizing that I didn't have the capacity to actually do it all. And it's led me to think about this idea of women doing it all. I cannot do it all, or I can for a short period of time, for like 3 months tops. And then after which it's giving burnout, and just recognizing that what my capacity is, being honest with myself about what my capacity is, and being honest with other people about what my capacity is. And it meant having to let go, having to slow down, having to rest. And that was something that was really difficult for me because some of these things were things that I was really passionate about, I was really looking forward to, and just recognizing that, yeah, girl, you can really desire something and not have the capacity for it. You can really be passionate about something. You can really want to pursue that dream, that goal, etc., and not have the capacity for it. And that was a really, really hard thing for me to come to terms with. And I think it's also changed my perspective on this idea of if they wanted to, they would. I think to some degree I've agreed with that sentiment. And now I don't quite agree with that sentiment because I've kind of had that lived experience of it's not that simple. Sometimes some people really, really want to, but they don't have the capacity for whatever reason to meet up with certain expectations, certain milestones, certain goals. And it doesn't mean that, the people on the receiving end have to like put up with that. But I think it's being honest with yourself about what your capacity is, and people who are on the receiving end saying, is this person's capacity enough for me? Because some people might have good intentions or the desire or the etc, but sometimes their best is just not good enough. And that's one of the things I had to come to terms with, is like sometimes my best is not good enough. And sometimes the best of people who I want to show up in certain ways is not good enough. And it doesn't mean that it's malicious or it's ill intended. It just means sometimes our best is not good enough. Because I think there's this idea of like, well, at least I think I've had this idea that if I'm doing my best and if people are doing their best, then it will all work out and things, there'll be a bow tie at the end. But I'm realizing that that's not always the case. Yeah, and I think it's also allowed me to like give people more grace and more flexibility in a way that I think if I didn't have this experience, then now I really, really get it. And I'm just like, okay, does this person have the capacity to do this thing, to show up in this way that I'm asking them to? Do I have the capacity to show up in this way, in the way that would be really valuable to this project, to this thing, etc? That's what I'm learning in this season of life. That was not easy to come to. That was not easy to come to. So now we're going to transition to the learning curve. We have 3 learning curve scenarios here. So this one is about friendship expectations. The person says, "Hi, Choma. I'm someone who makes a big effort in my friendships. I remember birthdays. I check in with people who are going through a hard time, and I generally try to be thoughtful. Lately, I've been realizing that some of my friends don't show up in the same ways, and I can't tell if that's exactly a problem or if we simply have different expectations of friendships. I care about these people and I don't want to keep score, but I also don't want to ignore my own needs. How do you know when you're expecting too much from your friends versus accepting too little. This is a good one. And I think something that I often say is like, it's okay to want what you want. It's okay to feel however you feel. Like, in some ways, the feelings that we feel are not really things that we can control. So it's okay to feel how you feel. You said, I don't want to ignore my needs. You should not ignore your needs. Your needs are something that's important. And as human beings, we all desire to be loved, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be cared for, to be nurtured, to be attended to. I don't know any human who doesn't want that. So I think the goal isn't to dismiss your needs, rather to honor those needs and to be honest for the specific people that you're asking, what does your life look like? What does your circumstances look like? Are they going through certain like transitions? Are they taking on certain loads that would be difficult in their personal life, that would be difficult to kind of show up for the friendship? I would say it's important to talk to people. One of the things I'm realizing, or I realized a couple years ago rather, was a lot of things are misunderstandings. One, checking in with people directly around, like, I feel like I'm showing up in so and so ways, and I don't always feel like you're showing up in these ways that are important to me. And I'd like us to talk about that. And I think that's something that's really, really important, to have that direct conversation with people and to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. But if you've talked about it multiple times and there hasn't been any change, and I think this is where the difference between, like, is this person's capacity? Because sometimes it's not malicious. Sometimes people really don't have the capacity to show up and put in that big effort in the way that you're able to. At the same time, these are needs that are important to honor. So what are other ways, who are other friends that can maybe be able to honor some of those needs that you have? Sometimes specific friends are not able to offer certain things, or are not able to show up in certain ways, right? And it doesn't make them bad people and or malicious. It just means sometimes you're asking the wrong people. And some people are high by friends, some people are like your close inner circle friends, some people are friends, some people are acquaintances. So it's like really gauging the friendship and seeing, like, am I asking my acquaintances to show up for me as a close friend? Do I need to cultivate more friendships, where we're kind of clear from the start about what we're looking for, what we desire? But I would say to communicate, very cliche, but to communicate. And then sometimes you do communicate and nothing changes, right? In that case, I would say to be honest with yourself around, like, do you want to continue being friends with these people? So I would say to be honest with yourself about what those needs are, and to say, are they different people that can meet these needs other than the people that you're asking? But to also, again, communicate with them and see if they can show up in that way. Friendship conflict. For the next one, this person says, a close friend recently made a comment that really hurt my feelings. I don't think they intended to be hurtful, which is part of why I'm struggling with it. If it had come from someone I wasn't close to, I probably would have brushed it off. But because I value the friendship, it keeps replaying in my head. I don't know whether bringing it up would strengthen the friendship or create unnecessary tension. How do you know when something is worth addressing, and how do you have these conversations? Ooh, this is a really, really good one. So first, you said this is a close friend. This is a close friend. I think it's important to tell the person how you're feeling. I think it's important to tell the person how you're feeling. And oftentimes when we don't tell people, it does more harm than good. Oftentimes when we're not able to, so when you're not able to kind of like say, like, yo sis, like, when you did this or when you said this, it made me feel so and so type of way. Oftentimes that does more good for the friendship than it does harm to the friendship. Being able to have that honesty, being able to have that clear communication saves the friendship more, because now you're not resenting that person. The resentment isn't building up. And I think that's something that's really, really important, is to kind of say things as they're happening and to not let that resentment build up. And this is coming from someone who's done that and had to learn the hard way. That, girl, that is not a good way to go about life. Like, I was one of those people who, and sometimes I really have to like push myself, like, communicate, like, to say how I feel, because it just feels so like icky and so vulnerable. So sometimes it can also feel like tricky in terms of like when to bring things up or like what's worth bringing up. And some things, not everything I bring up, some things is just like, okay. And then when it comes to things that like really hurt in a way you notice yourself like ruminating, I think you should 100% bring that conversation to this person if they're a close friend, especially. And how do you have these conversations as well? I think having the conversation from a place of I care about this friendship and I want to keep this friendship, and this friendship is something that's important to me. And I'm going to have this conversation because I want to maintain this friendship. Because sometimes when you don't have the conversation, then that resentment builds up and something else happens. And then maybe so you start behaving weird around them because of that comment. And now they feel that energy and now they start behaving weird because you're behaving weird and you start behaving even more weird. And now it's just this circle. And now things are piling up. Things are piling up, things that don't need to pile up. That if we just had that conversation initially, it would have really cleared things up to begin with, right? So I think coming from a place of one, I care about the friendship. My goal is to um I want to keep being friends with you, and hence why I want us to have this conversation. When you said so and so, it really genuinely hurt my feelings. Um, and speaking from a place of like so like I feel, as opposed to like you did, you said, you. No one likes to feel like attacked or dismissed or like belittled. Something that I also want to say is when it comes to conflict, because sometimes it's not a communication issue, it's like a care issue. And sometimes you can communicate in all the picture perfect, put a bow tie on it way, and it doesn't mean that the person wouldn't take offense to it. It doesn't mean that it would go perfectly well either. But it doesn't, nothing has indicated from this that this is someone who will be defensive. So I would say to have the conversations with them and to really focus on how you feel, and to really be honest about how you feel. I think an ideal interpersonal relationship is getting to a place where people are able to be honest with each other and know that yes, it's important to be respectful, it's important to be kind. So like always respect and kind as like the baseline. Um, but also giving people the space to kind of be angry. So like having the space where both of you can kind of give each other the space to be angry, I think is really, really important, especially as women. I feel like anger is something that we're not really given a safe space to express. And so I think if you are upset, if you are angry, it is important to express that in a healthy way, in a constructive way. And I think it's also important for the friend on both ends to give each other the space to be angry. This is something that I struggled with when people would kind of express themselves in a way that was passionate. Like I would really like I didn't like that. I didn't like that. Like I'm someone who I like to be spoken to be in a very like soft spoken way. And if someone is being like passionate, but I had to kind of differentiate the difference between someone being passionate and someone being really offended by my actions or my words versus someone being offensive. That's something I'm still learning, in all honesty. But I think it's important for this person to hold space for you to be angry, to express your anger in a healthy way, too, and to kind of hold space for each other. And sometimes we don't express things in a picture perfect way, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I would say to avoid using curse words. To avoid using curse words, because once you start putting some elements in there, it becomes a little messy. You can be passionate, but to avoid yelling, to avoid like kind of like standing over that person and just kind of like sitting down and talking across from each other. Be mindful of like your posture. Is it kind? Is it receptive? Is it coming? Does it appear like I'm willing to work on this? Another person says, making friends as an adult. I'm in my late 20s and recently moved to a new city. I have good friends, but most of them live elsewhere. I've met people through work, hobbies, and mutual friends, and while I've had a lot of pleasant interactions, very few have turned into actual friendships. Sometimes it feels like everyone has their people and there's no room for anyone new. How do you build meaningful friendships as an adult? And how do you know when it's worth investing in a new connection? This person, okay, so you've most of your friends live elsewhere. Okay, this is one I can relate to with certainty. So, one, I would say to continue to communicate with the friends that live elsewhere relatively often. Sometimes, as adults, unfortunately, you gotta schedule in a call. So, being like, oh, like, girl, in a couple of days or like a week in advance, depending on like what works for you guys, like, I'm free at this time. Are you free at this time? Like, let's talk on this time. Like, sometimes you got to schedule in the call because it seems like you said you have good friends, but they live elsewhere. So I think continuing to like maintain your friends, one, to kind of reduce the feelings of loneliness, two, to keep in touch with your friends, your good friends that live elsewhere. And then three, to kind of like take your time in building new friendships. And it seems like you recognize that you do have friends elsewhere. However, there's that desire for friendships that are like in person, friendships that are, you get to kind of spend time in person. There's just the in person time, it just really hits different. I think it takes a lot of intentionality. I think it takes a lot of work and effort um to build friendships as adults because everyone is in their own world, everyone is in their own bubble. But I would say following up with people. So would that be like your work friend saying like, oh, can we like get brunch on Sunday? Can we do this? Can we do that? Through hobbies. I think hobbies is a really good way, and I think also just taking your time in this process before you do cultivate like strong friendships. And how do you know if a new connection is worth investing? I would say if your values are aligned. I'm a very like values oriented person. That is that acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm a very like values oriented person. And so I would say if it's worth connecting, if it feels like simple, if it feels easy, especially for friendship, man. If it feels simple, if it feels easy, if it feels like you can be yourself, if it feels like your values are aligned, and you don't have to be the same people, you can be from completely different walks of life. So if it feels like our values are foundationally aligned for the most part, um, and you feel at ease, you don't feel this tension, then I think that's worth investing in. Let's say your hobby is like singing and like you take singing classes, it can look like that shows you that the two of you already have something in common. So saying like, oh, you know, before our next singing class, would you like to get coffee together? Would you like to take a walk together in the park? It doesn't have to include money. It doesn't have to include money. Like, do you want to do you want to talk on the phone? Like it can be something really simple. So now that we're done with the learning curve segment, we're going to transition to friendships. I think friendships is something that matters a lot. And not everyone has to be your best friend. I think there are different categories and there are different layers of friendships. I'm very, very, very grateful for my friends. I think my friendships has been some of the greatest loves of my life, in all honesty. But I love my friends so much. And I think again, back to that idea of like values. I have friends intentionally and unintentionally from different works of life, different racial groups, different like socioeconomic status, different ages. Most of my friends being like people mostly in their 20s as well, but I also have friends that like in their 30s, in their 40s, like because different people teach you different things. And I'm someone that really values wisdom, and I'm someone who really values variety of different experiences. And I feel like I get to have different experiences through my friends. Like for example, some of my friends are like the kind of people to kind of go camping. On a normal day, Chima would not go camping on a normal day, which I have tried it by the way. I've tried camping, aka glamping, and it's giving it's not for me. It truly is not for me. I was way too paranoid. I was like, why am I hearing all these nature sounds? Like I love a good like nature sound, like to like put on my phone, like while I'm sleeping. But in terms of the actual reality of the nature sounds, if you're enjoying the episode so far, make sure you subscribe and follow Charma Learns on all platforms. I want to make this a space where we can learn and figure this thing called life together. I recently glamped and I realized that the sort of glamping that I would like, it's like at that point, am I really sleeping outside? Like it would feel so much like I'm sleeping inside that I feel like it would kind of defeat the purpose of like actual camping. But yes, for example, friends that are interested in camping, and now I get to try camping because of this particular friend. Whereas like some of my friends, it's like They're not about that life. They know that even without trying. I'm the kind of person who's like, I'll give it a try. I'll give it a try. But like even without trying, they're like, yeah, that is not my cup of tea. Um I have friends who are like also therapists who I can all of the three friends I'm thinking of who are therapists are all licensed and I'm working towards licensure and I can kind of ask them bombard them with a lot of questions, etc. We can talk about the unique experience of what it means to be a therapist, not just a therapist, but a black therapist, a black woman therapist. And we can also have a million and one conversations outside of those, but having that commonality helps, right? And then I have friends who are like my high school friends or friends that I've known even before high school, who sometimes, if I'm having those existential questions around like who I am or like what I want, I can kind of go to them for reference, knowing that these are people who have one, my good intentions at heart and who care about me. But because we have that history, I can kind of look to them to say like you've known me for so long, you've known me for like over a decade, like there's a certain feedback that like friends who've known you for so long can give that friends who maybe you've known for like 2 years or a year cannot give. And I think that's really really valuable. In the same way, like they're friends who you also make as an adult, right? That also hold such a unique beautiful space because they know who you're choosing to be, who you're choosing to become. They kind of like know you in a different way, and know like who you're becoming, who you are, who you've, especially once your prefrontal cortex has developed, like and the friends you make after that, there's just like so many different possibilities. I have my friends that are also Igbo who are from the same tribe as me, and we can talk about our experiences being like Igbo women and like have a lot of thought-provoking conversations and like really relate on that. And then I have friends who are from a different tribe, but maybe are Nigerian or West African or just African in general. We can talk about our experiences being African women and what that means for us. So I think it's important to have friendships that kind of like honor who you are. And I think every single one of us, I am a whole world, I am a whole universe. And I think every single one of us, yourself included, is a whole world, is a whole universe. And I think it's important to have, for me personally, so I value having different friends. I think friendships are something that is really, really valuable and has been really, really foundational to my life. And I'm very, very grateful for my friends. And I think in some ways, like learning to give grace to people, people learning to give grace to me, learning to kind of like um conflict resolution together, learning to kind of say like you're not showing up for me in the way that I want to, or I'm not showing up for you in the way that you want to, and kind of having those honest, open conversations with each other, having the laughs, the joys, the excitement, the when my friends move to like different cities, there can be a lot of like sadness there, but also a lot of excitement because now it's like, girl, I get to go to this new city and like I get to visit you, but it takes like intentionality to now like maintain those friendships. Another thing I'm realizing is that I have limited capacity right now at this time, at this phase in my life, to be like proactive in your life in the way that it seems like you're seeking. I just know I don't. I'm saturated. I'm saturated at this point in my life, and I'm not really seeking new friends. And that was a hard discussion and conversation to have, but it was an important one to have. And one of the things that I miss most about friendships is like living close to my friends. So when I was in a different part of New York, it looked um like living like literally walking distance. So being able to, after work, it's just like, okay, girl, I'm coming over. And it's just like, okay, girl, I'll see you in five, literally 5 minutes. The other person is there and you can just kind of like spend your after work hours together, and then when it's time to sleep, I walk over or they walk back to their house. It's something that I miss so so dearly. And I lived closer to my friend, and she like ordered me food, which was really, really sweet. My friend, she's vegan. I love her food so much. And I feel like whenever I go to her home, like she introduces me to like all these vegetables. And she made me like a vegan pizza. Another of my friend also came over with some food. She bought some food. And that was just so sweet. And that's a day that I think about because I just felt so like attended to and so nurtured and so taken care of. And there's been times where my friends have been going through it for, whatever reason, and just being like, okay, like, would you like a warm meal? And me taking my ingredients. So just being able to like show up for each other in that way, or going to the gym together, like just doing those like mundane day-to-day life stuff of like every Saturday. Like for different friends I had like different themes. Like for example, there was a friend in which Oh, there was a friend in which we had like dance classes together, and that was like our thing. And I had a friend who like went to the gym together, and like every Saturday morning, that was her thing. We would go to the gym together, and then we would go to the farmers market together, like another friend. And we just had like all these schedules and all these routines, and those are memories that will always stay with me. Something else that I wanted to talk about when it comes to friendship is the ebbs and flows and the reality of like the different seasons that it looks like. So, for example, when I lived really close to my close friends, it looked like being able to like walk over on a random afternoon or on a random Saturday because it was like, I'm bored. I'm going to go over to your house. Like, I'm going to show up. I'm going to go over to your house. I'm going to be like, okay, girl, can I come over? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm walking over now. Um, and now that looks different because I live far away from a good amount of my college friends, and some of them have like moved to different cities. And so it looks different now, right? It looks like having to like visit each other. It looks like phone calls and making the time, but we're also caught up in our own dreams and goals and lives and life circumstances that is also unique in its own way. So it looks different. And when different life circumstances happen, it also looks different, right? I have friends who were with child. I have friends who live with family, who live on their own, who have roommates, who moved to a new city, who lived in a new city for some years. Like there's so many different variations. So what once worked might not be the same. Like for example, one of my really, really good friends is my college roommate. I love her so much. I love her so much. She was my roommate for the first 2 years of college. And um we literally lived in the same room together, like literally in the same room together. So we would kiki on a regular basis. It would be like, ooh, I miss those days so much. Whenever I like go to the store and I see like a microwavable popcorn, that's kind of like our thing. And it's like she'll send me a picture or I send her a picture because it's kind of like the good old days. But now it looks different, right? It looks like having to be like, okay, intentionally, she's in a different city. I'm in a different city from the one that we went to in college. So it looks like having to like intentionally like find the time to like meet. And we're both people who have a lot of things going on. So finding that time can be really difficult. Or it looks like phone calls. And they can be a lot of grief there. And there can be a lot of grief and like how friendships evolve out after college or after high school or after those really big milestones. There can be a lot of grief there. I felt a lot of grief, and in some ways I think I will always feel that grief. I think I will always reminisce, what used to be. At the same time, I'm also grateful for the reality of what is. And I think it's so important to enjoy every life stage as it's happening. I think there's so much beauty in every life stage. And if you're so caught up in the future, which I am a very like future oriented person, but I'm also someone who's able to like notice the beauty in the little things as it's happening. And that's something that I'm very grateful to myself for. um like even when we were having those like moments in college, like it would like kind of look around me, I'd be like, this is such a niche experience that won't be possible once we graduate, that won't be possible after this experience. And even the experiences I have right now in my life, it's very particular to the life stage that I'm in. And in a different life stage, it's going to look different. So I have to kind of appreciate my life as it's happening right now. And I was saying this to a really good friend of mine who made a really significant milestone in owning a home. And I was telling her the importance of kind of romanticizing the beginning process, the process of like trying to figure out furniture, what furniture should we get, what furniture shouldn't we get, and in some ways the emptiness of the home, because there's going to be a time where this home is completely filled with furniture, and the unique beauty of like the newness of the newness of this home, the unique beauty that's happening right now wouldn't be present in like 2 years. In the same way, there's going to be a specific beauty of having it fully furnished and, like having it feel like a home. There's going to be unique beauty then. And to kind of just appreciate each life stage, to kind of reminisce and like romanticize and take pictures, take videos, like talk to yourself about the unique beauty of what's happening as it's happening. A classmate from college gave me in one of my creative writing classes, which is one of my favorite classes from college, to be friends with someone is to for a long period of time is to be friends with someone for a long period of time is to witness their many deaths. Is to witness their many deaths. And that really stuck with me because I was just like, oh wow, like I've changed in so many different ways, and my friends have changed in so many different ways. And some of the things that we once wanted, we no longer want. I think when it comes to friendships, it's important to be honest with yourself about what your needs are, what your wants are. For example, showing up for each other looked different when we lived close together versus what it looks like now that we live several hundreds of miles apart. What makes you feel cared for? What makes you feel seen? What makes you feel understood? One of my really, really good friends, she would describe herself as like a low maintenance friend. She's someone who really, really values her alone time. So when she does make the time, it means it says something really significant. When she does show up for like the social events, it says something really significant. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't care. It doesn't mean that she doesn't love you and she's not invested in you. It means the way that she shows up looks very different from another friend who maybe shows up differently. And I think sometimes it's important to kind of appreciate people as they are. And I think for me, having a variety of different friends has kind of allowed me to like appreciate people as they are as opposed to expect people to be who they're not. Stereotypical challenges about girl friendships is women being catty. We be having our moments. Yes, yes, yes. I'm thinking about my specific friends. Right? We be having our moments. We be but okay, someone is in their bag, someone's having a moment right now. And there are times where I'm in my bag and I'm having my moment, right? And kind of giving each other the space to just be women, to just be people, and not judging each other harshly for having those moments. I think if it keeps happening and if you're being like rude or disrespectful or unkind on a consistent level, then that's something we need to talk about. There's also another stereotype of friendships ending suddenly for girl friendships. And I think that oftentimes back to one of the scenarios was around not saying things as they're happening. And one of the things I've learned is if I treasure this friendship, if I want this person to be in my life, for a long period of time, then I have to let them know the things that you're doing that I don't like. And I need to also create a space to also receive feedback if I'm doing things to them that they don't like. And seeing it as like preserving the friendship by saying things as opposed to not saying things. Um yeah. And I think it's important to have a space where your friends can be honest with you when you hurt their feelings, or vice versa. When you hurt each other's feelings, like, do you feel like you can be honest with each other? And not everything needs to be like, haha, let's just laugh about it. And like, because sometimes it's like, you're like, hey, hey, laugh about it. But sometimes you need to actually talk about it. Like, you need to actually sit down and like talk about it. A quote that I'm going to share with you about friendships is friendship is born at the moment when one person says to another, what? You too? I thought I was the only one. It's one of my favorite of all favorite shows, Golden Girls. One of my favorite shows in the whole wide world. I think it's such a binge-worthy show. I think there's a lot of like not so kind portrayal of girl friendships, and I feel like for me it embodies how I would describe my friendships with women. Doesn't mean it's been perfect. It hasn't. It truly hasn't. But it means that it's been, in my experience, it's been warm, it's been kind, it's been respectful, it's been nurturing, it's been forgiving, it's been mostly good things for the most part. Again, not perfect because I'm not a perfect person, and no single person in this world is perfect, right? So we've had our ebbs and flows, and I think for the most part, I've had more good friendships than not. And I think it goes back to that foundation of like what are our values. So yes, the Golden Girls. I love the Golden Girls so so much. They have they're sassy, they have attitude, they have personalities, they're also different and they're not trying to change each other and they just like appreciate each other for who they are. And also to see like older women are oftentimes not portrayed in media, and to just see a group of like older women like living their best life together, figuring this thing called life together, it's just so beautiful and so wholesome. Another thing in terms of friendship that I wanted to mention is the importance of having older friends. Most of my friends are friends in their 20s. However, I'm very intentional around like seeking older women, especially older Black women, because information is power. I think it's important to have information, and I feel like, and not just any older woman friend, right? Because there's some older women who I wouldn't necessarily be friends with, in the sense that like our values don't align, our outlook don't align. I the sort of women I go for in terms of like older women friends, or people who have an expansive mind and see like possibilities, or who are free, women who are free and who give themselves permission to be free, because then it gives me permission to be free. So it doesn't mean that they have to have acquired a certain like social status or socioeconomic status, but it means at their foundation they're free. Because it gives me permission to be free. It lets me know it's okay to be free. It lets me know that it's okay to kind of let my hair down and be. It's something I would 100% advise. And the retreat that I went to very recently this summer was a retreat catered towards like Black women, and I was the youngest person there. And so there was like so much wisdom that I gained from like hearing them talk about their lives, their openness, their kindness, their vulnerability. Um, and a really, really, really good friend of mine is a woman in her mid 40s, and she means so, so much to me. She is a friend. She's, one of my girls. She's a mentor. She's my biggest fan. I call her my angel. I really feel like she's like heaven sent, and she's been someone who's been impactful in so many areas of my life. Like she's been one of a really revolutionary piece in my life, and she's someone who speaks a lot of life into me, and it's able to kind of like she's someone who I really value her perspective. I really value her opinion. One, because our values are aligned. Two, because we have a lot of like similar lived life experiences. I think she like really understands me. Because if like our lives feel very parallel, that pretty much sums it. I think friendships are something that's really, really important. I think that, older women friends are something that I think every young woman, or every woman should say, because it could always be someone older. So if you're in your 60s, it could always be someone who is in their 80s who could advise you or give you feedback. I think they're essential. I think they're essential because when you think about it, for example, if you're in your 20s, right, which is what I am, a lot of my friends and I, like, yes, we're in such different spectrums of life, but we relatively have the same information. We relatively share the same knowledge. We relatively view the same videos on social media, for example. But someone who is older has they're like 2 decades ahead of you, a decade ahead of you. Like they have a different perspective, a different worldview. They have a different set of information that you don't have. And I think as a woman, as a Black woman, I think knowledge is important. Knowledge gives you options. Knowledge reinforces a sense of possibility, and you don't know what you don't know. So that brings us to the end of our solo episode on friendships. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I look forward to seeing you in future episodes of Trauma Learns. And yeah.